I didn't notice beforehand that they had a list of a portion of 10,000 names from people from other countries who were part of the resistance, who helped people fighting against the Third Reich. And I never looked at it before, but I noticed that 4 names with my last name were on there. And I have no idea who these people are at all. And I didn't cry for it, but I had to blow my nose a lot. But I didn't know why. And I decided to write this very long piece, and it was my only thing that's a body count. The only poem I have that's a body count. And the only thing I can tell you that is totally truthful about this poem is the first names of the 4 women that you will hear in this, because they are people from the resistance who fought to protect people from the Third Reich. Beyond that, this is all a story. So this is a piece called No Compunction. Some within the resistance during World War II knew of others assisting the Jews, the gypsies, the homosexuals, but they kept everything secret for their safety. They had to. It was all they could do to stay alive. She waited quickly outside of the station, outside of Stalag, so she could help the British pilots captured by the Third Reich. But when they escaped at 6 a.m. under a blanket of Nazi gunfire, they all fell, coloring the snowy fields a crimson red. Despite losing her life in Houston in silence, she never knew her relatives, Johanna, Petronella, Marie, would all also have a similar fate and be killed at the hands of the Third Reich. Marie was a lowlander and never got involved in politics, but she couldn't sit by and do nothing when her pharmacists, her daughter's teachers, her next-door neighbors were shipped to distant third world countries. Marie stayed silent and stayed awake throughout the night on her last night alive, with a candle lit in her front window, waiting for 2 men, Jacob and Chaim, so she'd conceal them under the plaster and lime mock wall before they traveled on to safety. She stayed all night along the staring all night along the barren road near the train tracks and Forest Ledge, and only saw the 2 figures in the distance once daylight broke. So she left the candle burning, left her daughters, grabbed her coat and ran out the front door to take them in. But when they were only 20 meters apart, that is when she saw the dark truck coming toward them, littered with swastikas. So she turned across the train tracks to get to the still blooming rows of trees. Jacob and Chaim followed. The SS men didn't even wait to get out of the truck before they started shooting at them. The SS had no compunction for killing the Jews, or the homosexuals, or the resistance. When Marie saw Chaim shot first, the only thought she had was that Chaim is Hebrew for life, before she and Jacob were both gunned down. The squad leader saw the male Jewish noses, could identify the strong Dutch female, and thought about what fun he could have had with her. He scanned the skyline for a possible home, then signaled his men to go, after spotting one house in the distance down the road. They violently knocked on the door after seeing the lit candle in the window. They beat again at the door before the frightened 16-year-old Johanna made sure in the dark that everyone else was hidden, wondered where her mother was, and then finally opened her front door. The 3 SS men stood there, each with greed in their eyes. "Wo deine Vater?" She told him her father died years ago. Their young sister Petronella walked toward her before he asked, "Wo ist deine Mutter?" She said she didn't know where her mother was. The three men walked in, and they told her this was a random search, and they asked if there was anyone else at her home. Spotting the unpainted plaster and lined wall after Johanna said no, the leader walked to the wall and knocked. But he heard a noise, and then he asked if this room was smaller than before. And before Johanna could answer about the last search, the squad leader stepped back, and the other two men pointed their Lugers at an unpainted wall adorned with a single oil painting. In an effort to somehow alert behind the wall the small trapped family, young Petronella said she wanted to save the painting. Then she walked toward the painting on the wall when they opened fire and killed young Petronella where she stood. Johanna muffled her scream in shock and disbelief. "Warum did you do it? Why did you do this?" was all she could ask. The squad leader walked up to her, jerked her head back by her hair. "Sie war das Lichte." She was the ugly one, he said to her before he took her to her bedroom to rape her, while the other two men listened for noises from the fake wall before they took turns raping Johanna. When one of them would hear a noise in that unpainted wall, they fired one shot. They didn't know if they hit anyone, but the noise would stop. After they finished raping the Dutch girl repeatedly, the nearly unconscious Johanna smelled petrol. They poured everywhere in her home. They poured more on that unpainted wall before they left the house to set it aflame. They stood outside and waited in case any vermin tried to run free. They all had their guns pointed. They were ready. As the flames of this little furnace died down, they lit their smokes on the dying embers and got their truck. Driving away, the three were pleased, proud they saved space on the next train to Birkenau. Thank you.